you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
The problem is that, I'm the President of the United States. I'm not the Emperor of the United States.
Yes, that seems to be a problem. Good evening, everybody. We're doing a special edition of Smith Radio along with Brian Smith and
Kerry Smith,
giving you all the hard-hitting news that you didn't hear of or that maybe you did hear last week, but we're here to go over it, clear it up so that Monday morning when you get back to work, you know what you're talking about.
Well, and we like to give a take that you may not have heard other people say about these, pop culture events or political events of the week.
Right. Because opinions do matter here on Smith Radio.
Well, especially our opinions, because our opinions are usually the best opinions.
Oh,
especially,
yeah.
Well,
I agree.
Everybody knows that when something comes out of our mouth, that becomes fact.
Correct.
So, just saying.
So we've got a lot of things to talk about tonight, a lot of things to go over. We're going to touch on a bunch of different topics, anything and everything from ISIS. I want to touch on Scott Walker. We're also going to a little bit on Hillary. I really don't want to do too much about her because I'm just, in my mind, she is completely irrelevant.
It's just comedy. That's all it is.
Got random. I've got a new section now called Random News.
You mean what we've been talking about isn't random enough?
I've got more randomness of random news than what we normally do.
So it's random relative to our normal random news.
Oh, man. Well, and I don't know if it's random. I mean, the title of the show today is about how Obama sold out, Obama sold out America and the world to...
You call it sold out, but I guess if you wanted to be economically correct, he technically just bought
surrenders.
Off. He bought off.
I don't even know what I titled the show.
Well...
Obama surrenders U.S. and globe to Iran.
Somebody call in and tell us what the name of the show is.
Mr. Producer behind the glass. I can't hear him. I can hear him. I guess he's having
pounding on the window.
And apparently he's got technical difficulties and he's not able to talk to us through our headphones.
No, and his door's locked, so he's just trapped in there.
Right.
It's on a time delay that it unlocks when the show's over. So...
Because they can't get in. It was like that. Oh, what was that movie?
Oh, Pump Up the Volume?
Was that one?
That was the one where they were running around with the shortwave radio.
What's the one where they locked themselves in the studio?
Oh, you must be talking about Shawshank Redemption.
What?
Because he was in there and he started playing the Mozart song, and they were like, "You better open up this door right now!" And then of course, he didn't, and then they ended up having to bust the window out, and then they beat him up.
This was an 80s movie. They all had long hair, and they were like skater Wayne's World kind of guys.
It wasn't...
And you would know them if you saw the actors. You know their names instantly.
Oh, I don't remember.
And they hijacked
the radio
station. They came playing.
I remember the plot.
Came and
I remember the plot.
Right.
Yes. So that's what it is, basically.
So that's what we're doing here.
We are in a world-famous studio. They are pounding on the window. They're just... I don't know.
And we're in a bunker, just in case, with our tinfoil hats on, just in case the government tries to come get us.
Well, the tinfoil hat is definitely a critical piece of attire, considering that without it, the government would then start to be able to control us. But they can't control us as long as the tinfoil hat's on.
Speaking of body parts, this came up this week. Just kind of interesting random news before we get started. They are able to grow tiny little hearts that beat straight from stem cells.
Okay.
So they're able to take stem cells from your body and grow you your own heart.
Is it tiny, or does it keep growing until?
With the fact that they're tiny, I don't know. I mean, when you're born, is your heart born the same size as it is when you're 50?
So you're saying that this tiny heart will eventually grow
I
to
imagine.
a usable size.
I imagine your eyes are always the same size. That's why babies look like their eyes are big, huge, because they are the same size as they are when they're 25.
Okay.
So do you think your heart does that?
No,
You think it grows?
I'm sure it does.
Okay.
Well, I'm like 98%
Let's hope so.
sure.
Let's hope so.
Right.
So that's news. That's interesting. Technology really advancing extremely fast.
Well, eventually they're going to be able to do the designer body parts. I've been in this like 3-week-long, maybe 4-week-long knockdown, drag out battle royale on the YouTube comment section about evolution and creationism and all that kind of stuff. And as a person who believes in life being created by some sort of an intelligent designer,
Right.
If you're Christian, you would say, okay, well then that would be God. And if you're, Muslim, you would say it would be Allah or whatever. But it makes sense. The DNA actually supports the creationism argument. When you can take a stem cell and create the different body parts, I look at DNA as just the blueprint of life. So they're able to create all the different parts of a living thing using stem cells actually jives with that. Of course, evolutionists would then say, well, it proves what we're saying about evolution and how the DNA does all that kind of stuff. But it's kind of interesting. But technology-wise, I would say we're not too far away from just whatever body parts. Just go ahead and grow that for you. In fact, we're probably already there, don't you think?
Well, they are able to, without a doubt, they're able to grow skin on a sponge in a lab, and it is your skin.
Mm-hmm.
And so they can take that skin and then graft it to your body, and your body will not reject it. It'll take it in because it thinks it's your skin.
And I've heard a story about stem cells being used to help somebody with a severed spinal cord grow it back.
Oh, we did that story about 3 weeks ago. There was a guy, his spine was severed completely clean all the way through.
Mm-hmm. Which in the past, that was definitely 100% the rest of your life you're wheelchair bound. There is no hope. It doesn't grow back.
Right. And you can Google this story. It's not hidden or anything, but his spine was completely severed all the way through for years and years and years, never used any part of his body below his neck.
Wherever the sever was, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so what they did is they cut ligaments out of his leg and his arm to overlap the nerves in the spine to make it reach, because they had shrunk and pulled away from each other.
Mm-hmm.
To make it reach, I guess sprinkled it with some pixie dust.
Which would be stem cells.
Stem cells?
Right.
And then I mean, I don't know if they put a rod in there to bridge the gap, but
Well, it's funny that you say it. I mean, there has to be something more in depth than that, because just the mechanics of what you're saying is almost as crude as the science used in the book Frankenstein to recreate a
you mean the one
human.
that Steve Martin was in?
You might be thinking
the brain.
Oh, yeah, well, there's that. Another reference to a previous episode. I thought you were going to say Gene Wilder with the Young Frankenstein.
Dude.
But
That movie was hysterical.
I don't get it.
You didn't think it was funny?
I don't know. It seemed, maybe it was the pace. The pace seemed really slow. It's on everybody's top 10 list of greatest comedies of all time, and I've seen it as number 1 on a couple of them.
Oh, see, now I don't know if it's an all.
Yeah, they were saying top 10 all time on a couple lists, and I was like, I thought I seen that movie, but gosh, I don't. Well, the Airplane is always up there. Airplane is usually 1, 2, or 3 in everybody's top 10 comedies or top 100 comedies.
And I've said this before: if you have young children, be careful watching Airplane. I was a young lad when I first saw my first T-Toss, and it was in that movie.
Yeah, it's well, the thing that makes it so funny is it's so unexpected. You're just not expecting that at all, and then boom, right in your face, and that's what makes it funny. But anyway.
Right.
So what's going on this week? We have so we had a shooting.
No.
Yeah, so
You mean a gun shot itself?
So the media, of course, calling it another lone wolf.
Well, I also heard that CNN was...
They're not using the word terrorist.
No. They were...
Nobody is.
No, CNN had a whole panel trying to discuss alternatives to why.
Why that he did it?
Yes. Yes.
They are just so... It's one thing to bury your head in the sand, but
They're
it's
beside themselves.
It's another thing to grab the collective head of every individual in America and shove it in the sand for them, because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to say, citizens, you need to go ahead and put your head in the sand because that's what we're telling you should do. I think that's the best course of action at this point. Go ahead and put your head in the sand.
There's a comedian, he's a black comedian, his name's Mitchell, and he fishes for a better angle on Chattanooga terrorist. Quote, did he enjoy hunting or other small town activities? He shared that in a tweet.
Is he talking about the shooter?
Yeah.
Oh, for crap's
Well,
sake.
what they're trying to do is they're trying to relate this hunter, because you remember when the I don't know, there was a shooting, a killing, and the killer was on the loose, and nobody knew his identity, whether he was black, he was white, he was Muslim.
Oh, like the DC sniper.
Was that it? And they were just they were just dying. Oh, it's gotta be a Tea Party white redneck.
It was such a shock to everybody that
not everybody,
the DC sniper turned out to be a duo of two black Muslims.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they were black Americans transformed Islamic faith.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was like the kind of Islam that you see in the Middle East, or if it was like the Nation of Islam type of anti-white, black liberation theology, whatever that you see in prisons. Which, I mean, Nation of Islam is strong in prison populations, but
Right.
you look at Mike Tyson. That's when he became Muslim, when he was in prison for.
Right.
Being falsely accused of rape. Well, I don't know if it was or not, but I don't know if he's guilty or not, but that's
Well, I mean, you and I, we've talked about Mike Tyson a lot on this show.
Well, the thing about Mike Tyson is he just happened to be convicted of rape back when it was the McCarthy era of rape.
It was an instant.
was
you
the
instantly
McCarthy era.
Yeah, you instantly and.
It was
folks,
this fear. It was a population-wide fear cast over every male in America. Oh my God! I hope that X, Y, and Z woman that in my life that I know, whether we're involved romantically or she just happens to know me personally, God forbid if she ever comes forward. Literally every woman in America had a loaded and cocked gun pointed at the temple of any man that they knew at all times. All they had to do was pull that trigger, and that guy was over. His life was over.
Right.
And that's how it was in America in the 80s. All she had to do was say, oh, he raped me, and there was nothing anybody could do. You were definitely 100% guilty unless somehow, by some stroke of luck, you had some way to prove without any shadow of any doubt your complete innocence.
When was it even went all the way up to, and I'm remembering this one, thank you, Mr. Google. Remember the Duke lacrosse scandal?
Oh, yeah. I think that was recent. That was very recent.
Right, 06.
Yeah, that was very recent.
But I think at that time,
because the McCarthy era kind of died at that point.
But the media wanted to... They wanted nothing more than to see a whole team of white, privileged college men
now that you're saying
to
that,
come down and be thrown away to prison for raping a black woman.
right. But it wasn't just that they were white and male. Is that there was this perception that because they were Duke players, that they were of extreme privilege.
They were pedigree.
They were wow. Okay. So
I'm sorry, folks. When I start thinking of this white privilege, this privilege, I start thinking of like the Brits and Britain and royalty and.
well, you're thinking like a dog show at that point.
Yes,
They're the winners.
The British in the first in show.
They were first in show. Oh my gosh. So yeah, they wanted to ruffle their fur.
And when they smile, it's like a neon yellow light.
Who?
the privilege.
Oh, oh wow. So they aren't that pedigree. Wow. So anyway, so it kind of makes me wonder when I look back and reflect on the McCarthy era of rape in the 80s, if like what was the motive, like what caused that? And I'm just now thinking of this for the first time. I feel like it was this crossroads of the very early stages of the feminazi movement, and it's crossing with the old guard of the man looking at women as the damsel in distress, and they need to be protected. And when you have the crossroads of this feminaziism and in a world where men look at women as something that, oh, you need to be so protected, what you end up with is the McCarthy era of rape, where these feminazis are like, oh, we'll get them, we'll just call rape, and all these men are like, oh, she said rape, how could she possibly lie about something like that? We need to protect her, and we need to get even with that evil man that obviously must have done it, must be guilty of it. And so that's where that must be. That's my theory now. I just came up with that right now. I didn't even think about that. I mean, so what do you think of the theory? My theory of the 80s McCarthyism of rape. It's the crossroads of the early stages of feminazism.
I'm with you on that. Yeah. I'm with you on that. Absolutely.
I think we uncovered
and then when they
a chapter of my book in the future.
Yes, and I think that when they see your average, because evil loves to play on honest, average, all-American good-heartedness. Evil loves to prey on that.
Right.
And whenever they can, they will. And when an evil feminazi sees the knee-jerk reaction of an honest, all-American man...
Oh, you're saying that they used that attitude against them.
Oh, yes!
Like, oh, look at this. They want to protect the damsel in distress. Well, let's give them something to protect.
Right.
Wow.
Right. It's like, I was gonna quote a movie, but it was part of a movie I did.
Oh. Wow. That's like when you...
Remember when the doctor stuck his finger, he was doing brain surgery, and he stuck his finger in the back of the girl's head, and she raised her hand, and he said, "You have a question?"
Was that in the movie you're talking about?
Yeah, the missing finger.
Wow. But no, referring to that would be like one thing I like to do is if somebody looks like somebody famous, I like to point it out to them.
Right.
Well,
you had me going.
Every once in a while. Yeah, right. Every once in a while, I'll see somebody that totally looks like somebody that I know that is not famous. Well, I can't bring that up to them. They won't know that person. Like, dude, you look like this guy I know named Tony, man. Oh, no, thanks.
Tony Siciliano.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, it'd be like doing something like that. So, yeah, we can't reference a movie that very few people. How many theaters that show in?
Home theaters.
Oh, wow. If that's what you call that home theater.
What is the definition of theater is.
Right.
So
If you have a smaller TV on top of a console TV that no longer works, that's
Right.
not a theater. Wow. Unless there's a couch in front of it, then that's a theater.
hey, so out of that shooting, back to the shooting, one of the
Victims.
victims who was injured was taken to the hospital and has now been pronounced dead. He
I
did
heard
pass
that.
away.
So the count went up from 4 to 5, I guess, right?
5 dead and the shooter.
Oh, so 5. So 6 total.
Right.
Nobody really counts a shooter unless you're a journalist.
Right? No.
They'll say 5 dead or 6 dead, and they'll say including the shooter or whatever. I'm glad he's dead. You know, does that make me an evil person?
Okay, well, no, not at all. Because when you see evil die, you should rejoice in the fact that
We can't hurt anybody else.
there's a
now.
little less evil. Well, just like Pamela Geller said, you know, when that gunman went from Arizona to Texas, and the security, dude, when you're in America, I'm just giving you a heads up, jihadists.
Yeah.
When you're in America, okay,
Okay.
and you approach somebody who looks like he might be a mall cop or a security guard, a policeman, or maybe even just an average American citizen,
That has an American flag on his T-shirt.
probably has a gun.
Well, and
Probably knows how to use it.
And not only that,
Probably.
but he's probably itching to use it on you because you are the enemy. No, we need to talk about this. This is
True.
something that the
True.
journalists are not talking about. What happened in Chattanooga would be identical if in 1942 some Nazi shot up a bunch of military people at a military base or someplace in America, inside American the continental U.S.
Right.
Could you imagine the uproar that would have caused? Now you got journalists frantically trying to build a narrative that is not accurate. What we have here, let's talk reality for a second here.
Okay, when you're done talking reality, I'm going to quote
Fantasy?
reality.
Oh, you're gonna quote
Go
reality.
ahead.
So what we have here is maybe not so much a country, because Islam, I mean, they're trying to, the caliphate.
Yeah, they definitely want to. Well, they see the whole world as their country, and they're just slowly taking it back.
Well, they're implementing the law of their land, which would be Sharia law.
Right.
They're just gaining the power to do so. But even if they don't get the whole world, if they can turn, let's say, 3 or 4 of the existing countries in the Middle East into one giant, like, new Ottoman Empire,
Right.
they would call that the caliphate. And, of course, they would continue. They're very imperialist. They're just like, it could be Alexander the Great. It could be Germany in the 30s, where they wanted to
Attila
expand.
the Hun.
Any of the even
Genghis Khan.
Napoleon,
Genghis.
Khan, all those who just wanted to expand under the motive of being the leader of the entire world. That's what we have right now with Islam in the Middle East. Those people have declared war on the United States. They are actively engaging in warfare against the United States. The only reason it isn't like a World War II or World War I, number one, they haven't gained the strength to be at that level yet. But number two, they're all the way across the other side of the world, and that's very difficult to engage us like, let's say, Germany engaged Poland or France or even Great Britain, who is across the channel or whatever. If they had the opportunity to, they would. Look at what they're doing to Israel with all the attacks on Israel constantly.
Absolutely. Verbally, verbal threats, moving of military equipment closer and closer and closer.
Firing of shoulder-held rockets into Israel all the time, nonstop. The bombs that happen at the coffee shops and stuff like that, where they blow up a lot of people. That hasn't happened recently, but I got to credit Israel with the kind of vigilance the vigilant defense that they have at all times in and around their entire country is to credit for their ability to stave off those kind of attacks. The journalists in America are trying desperately, and they're succeeding at tricking, for whatever reason, I can't figure it out. Why would you do this? America into thinking that we are not in the same exact kind of war with an entire group of people that could be constituted a country, the same as if we were in World War I, World War II, all of that.
What blows my mind, though, is that these journalists don't understand that they would be one of the first to be removed by a dictatorship regime, government,
or at least
takeover.
silenced, like Charlie Hebdo.
Oh yeah,
Silence killed. You want to protect life and limb.
Right.
You're gonna end up being like the journalists of Charlie Hebdo if they don't wise up and start to fight back with their pen.
right.
Just start writing. At least be honest. Just be honest about it. So what we have here is a military style attack. It was weak and cowardly. They basically, when I say they, I mean the lone gunman,
The lone
who
wolf.
was, by the way, at least I don't know about ordered by ISIS.
Well,
but
he
at,
was
at the very least given the blessings of them.
Well, he was radicalized from, I guess he's out of Tennessee. He was radicalized and now idolized by jihadists
course.
worldwide.
The story I heard, though, was that the website for the jihadists took credit for it instantly, which, if true, would prove that they were involved.
Right, or that they were connected in some way, even just through information.
Right, and also, did you know that he left for the Middle East for months? He was gone for months in the Middle East.
There's a reason for that. He had to hook back up with his people.
Well, and he was probably getting instructions, training, connections, networking, all that stuff. And the guy was completely off the radar. This is a huge failure of American intelligence. I mean, it's one thing to have some random guy be able to go buy a gun and just shoot a bunch of people. I mean, it's really hard to prevent that from happening.
Correct.
I mean,
they even say
anybody could do that.
Cops even say that the hardest murder to solve, or hardest crime to solve where somebody dies, is just an absolute random walk by. Like if you just drove by somebody on the street, literally just boom, shot them and drove off, it is the absolute hardest crime to solve because usually murders are connected.
Well, yeah, it could be like a loved one or
Right.
a hate one. I assume you call it a loved one. But,
Right.
or former.
There's some kind of connection. And that,
Right.
and I mean, even like this even has a connection. You know, terrorist, jihadist, Muslim.
Right, and the failure is that this should have showed up on the radar.
Correct.
This is a guy who went to the Middle East for a couple of months, comes back, and is able to just go pass a check when he buys a rifle or whatever, and at least put him on. This guy was totally off the radar. I'm not saying now, if you're going to be a purist when it comes to rights, he should be allowed to go and buy a gun because one of our rights, the Second Amendment, is the right to bear arms. I don't see why he should be prevented to bear arms. It would be like, he's got to protect himself. Maybe he went to the Middle East and has absolutely no desire whatsoever to attack America. So it shouldn't prevent him from being able to buy a gun. However, I don't have a problem with them being able to keep an eye on this guy.
Right.
And maybe even then they couldn't have prevented it. But the point is this guy was totally off the radar.
Right.
And then then it happened and everybody was like, oh my gosh.
Right.
You mean this guy was in the Middle East for 2 months?
Fox News put up an article about this. They said U.S. investigators aren't ready to conclude that Thursday's murder of 4 Marines was an act of terrorism, but terrorists are
what?
Terrorists are concluding this was terrorism, but U.S. investigators have not concluded that this was terrorism.
I don't like to use the word terrorism or terrorist because
Really?
Well, because if you want to talk about what's the definition of a terrorist,
Okay.
it's what he does and why. So, like when we were in the military, I learned, we were taught about terrorism, and the motivation for terrorism is the acronym RIP, which is either religious, ideological, or political. So that's the motivation for what they do, and they do it in order to terrorize. But if you look at Nazi Germany, they weren't doing what they were doing to terrorize people. They were trying to win a war. Right now, when we have an Islamist, you may call him a terrorist. I say I disagree with that line of reasoning. When you have an Islamist go and attack in a military style, even though it might be poorly done, he's just a foot soldier in a war that his side is trying to win.
Okay.
So terrorism, the need to terrorize, I don't see it.
Okay, dictionary.com calls it the use of violence and threats to intimidate or coerce, especially for political purposes.
So I guess if his motive was, hey, look, I'm going to kill these 4 Marines. I know I'm going to die in the process because I'm in America and Americans will kill me, which exactly what happened.
Right.
But I'm going to accomplish my goal of terrorizing everybody and intimidate. My act will serve as an intimidation factor for our movement, which is caliphate worldwide.
Right, and I think that's a political movement.
Yeah, I mean, was Genghis Khan, Genghis Khan, was that a political movement?
I don't know.
So definition-wise,
that's a tough one.
Definition-wise, there might be some ambiguity there. But me
be.
personally, I'm done with looking at it as a way to intimidate or to terrorize and scare people, whatever.
The media wants it to be terrorism because
but they're not calling it that, though.
Oh, because I was thinking because the media loves to have us being.
If they want
intimidated,
I would agree with you if they kept on repeating over and over, terrorists are performing terrorism and terrorists. It's just not happening.
Well, they love to say it if it's a white guy.
Oh, yeah.
So dozens of Twitter accounts spewing jihadist bile have placed Mohammed al-Bazizi,
which is the shooter, by the way. We didn't ever name him. Which we may not have named him because that was a butchering.
Doesn't matter. I mean, his name's Muhammad.
Muhammad, yeah.
Go figure.
Right.
They have placed his bearded face as their main page images.
Of course they
did.
So
all over the Twitter, Muhammad al-Bazizi has now become a martyr. And
if they had the means, they would make a statue of him.
Correct. Unlike... Oh, no, never mind. That's another story.
They love tearing down statues, though.
Yes, they do.
Ancient, 1,000-year-old statues. They love tearing those down.
And so they've his bearded face is their main images, and tweets believed to have been sent out by Islamic State radicals, that's ISIS, and sympathizers have proclaimed him a martyr.
Okay, you want to hear something really controversial? My opinion.
Okay. Opinion piece.
I actually... when you think of the barbarism of terrorism or what the Islamic people are doing with the chopping off heads of women and children and burning people in cages and all that, I actually have to commend this guy.
Yikes!
If you're going to conduct military operations while in a war, which is exactly what this is, it's a war declared by Islam against the United States. He is a soldier in this war.
So you would give him a thumbs up versus the idiot that drove from Arizona to Texas and died without killing anybody.
Well, no, I'm not saying that because that guy that drove all the way to Texas
got himself killed before his attempt.
Well, let me get my thought out first, and then we'll talk about we'll visit that because that's an interesting comparison. This guy attacked a military target.
Oh.
So I have to commend him for that. I mean, he's not killing women and children like they normally do.
Versus jihadists in France attacking news stations.
which is completely, well, number one, it's just tactically stupid. It's like attacking somebody that buys ink by the barrel. It's stupid. It's tactically stupid.
Where do you buy ink by the barrel?
I need a barrel.
I need a barrel of ink.
You don't want, they'll carpet bomb you with barrels. It's like napalm. No, but, so that was dumb. And that was cowardly. And you don't attack civilians in a war unless it's collateral damage. You don't use elementary schools as a bunker for an armory.
Yeah,
an armory.
Right.
Double this.
Hospitals as armories.
Yeah, that right there is clearly a violation of what is internationally accepted as rules of war.
And air quotes, cowardly. That is coward. If you do that, you are clearly a pathetic coward.
Right, and if you have to do that, like let's say that somebody wants to make the argument to me, well, hey, we're just weak. We're weak. You guys are strong. We have to do what we can.
All's fair in love and war, Carrie.
Okay. So that would be their
Right.
argument.
Yeah, all's fair in love and war.
And while we're weak and we can't stand up to you big, bad Americans, we have to do what we have to do, which is put all these school children at risk to double their school as an armory. My argument would be, well, you should have thought of that before you went to war with these guys. I mean, if I'm at a bar and, I don't know, let's just say Mike Tyson's there, and I'm trying to holler at some chick, and he decides to come over and salt my game, I might have to walk away.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be like, I don't care who you are.
And then 3 or 4 of his other big giant linebacker buddies step up and say, well, you're going to have to fight all 7 of us.
Right. It would be wrong for me to go ahead and do something that would be considered cowardly in a fight, which would be, I don't know, pull out a knife and not stab him, but stab him while he's not looking.
Oh, you look at him and say, okay, I give up. And he's like, all right, good.
And
then
he
he turns around and you stick him in the kidney.
Right, just jab him real good and then run off and be like, ha, ha, ha. That is the bar equivalent of
that
what
would
the
be
jihadists are doing.
Okay, so then we'll recoin that term. Dude, did you just Muslim somebody? That's when you stick them in the back when they're not looking. You run away laughing.
Yeah, but if I have to ask somebody if they did that, that's problems. Like, dude, you just did what?
Dude, I can't believe you just Muslim that dude. Why did you do that?
But it was Mike Tyson. I can't beat him.
It's a
Well, why did you get in a fight with him?
Right.
If he's going to salt your game or do whatever he did that you thought was wrong, sober up, walk away, live to fight another day. Don't be like, hey, I have to do what I have to do.
Okay. According to one top federal official, the posthumous praise for the Sikh slaughter comes over the very forum that may have turned the suburban-bred college graduate into a killer.
Isn't it weird? All of his friends, I don't know about all of them, but he has friends coming forward, former friends or whatever, people that knew him well, that are saying, wow, I would have never thought it. And then I saw the picture of him and I saw the beard and I just couldn't believe it. He was such a outgoing, fun-loving. Everybody liked him. Isn't that weird?
That's super weird. Not only is it super weird, but I mean, I'd like to think, and we've talked about this many times, but maybe I'm projecting, but I would like to think that when I die, that people look back and say, man, he was such an outgoing, jovial kind of guy.
Well, let me put it to you this way.
You could never get me to go down that road to kill somebody.
Yeah, that's weird. Well, this is how weird it is. Everybody had somebody in their life, either currently, formerly, when you went to school. Okay, put your imagination caps on and go back to high school and think of all the people that you knew. And then think of somebody who was the happy-go-lucky, outgoing guy or girl, doesn't matter, who's like, that everybody liked. Everybody knew somebody in school that everybody liked. Now, imagine that person just went and in cold blood just blasted a bunch of Marines at a recruiting station.
See, when you were saying that, I immediately an image of a guy popped up to me. I think this is in junior high. However, he wasn't liked.
Well, I'm saying
This
somebody
guy-
that like. How do you think
guy
of
was-
somebody that doesn't follow the
Well, but check
description?
this. He was so outgoing, and he was kind of funny.
Okay.
I mean, like one time I wore in like a military like shirt or jacket, and he's like, Smith, gee, I don't know.
What?
And I was like, what? It's like, dude, what the? I mean, he was just
So he was somebody that everybody hated.
He was so, and not only that, but he never showered, and his
okay.
clothes are always dirty and wrinkly.
So you should have popped right back. Well, at least my clothes are clean.
Yeah, I should have. However, he was so outgoing and so annoying that you couldn't help but to be like, oh, that's, dude, what's he going to say now? I mean, it was just crazy. But let me tell you, I would not be shocked if that guy came out because we didn't embrace him. But if the jihads embraced him.
Oh, like Chris Cornell.
Exactly.
Chris
Bingo.
Cornell, though, he was one of those guys that didn't have very many friends at all. In fact, there were people that came out that said that, I think his dad came out and said that
His
guy,
only friend.
Yeah, that CIA undercover guy was his only friend.
Him and his mom.
Well, I mean, by the way, he used to cuss his mom out all the time.
Right.
Oh,
So,
it was an abusive relationship. I'm talking abusive from him to his mother, not
Right.
the other way around like you would think.
so apparently, the FBI is investigating the Chattanooga shooting as a terrorist act. However, the agency has not declared it one yet.
Well, what they're doing is they're taking orders from Obama,
Right.
and which is to only call it a Muslim terrorist act as an absolute last resort. After all resources and information has been completely exhausted to prove that this is not, or to show some sort of an indication that it's not, any shadow of a doubt that it could possibly not be a terrorist attack, all of that has to be completely exhausted before they can go ahead and reluctantly concede
Right.
to the fact that, well, we can't find anything out there that shows that it's not. So
Right.
I guess we'll reluctantly, on a Friday afternoon, late before a huge holiday, we'll go ahead.
4-day weekend.
Yeah, 4-day weekend. We will go ahead and reluctantly sneak it underneath. We'll stick it in the giant stack of news.
Yeah, and
somewhere in the middle.
New York Times reports it on page 197F.
Which that's interesting because they only have 40 pages.
That's the internet version of the
Oh, it made it at the very end. It says, "For more news, please see www:/." It's like the wrong internet address. So when you get there, you're like,
the slash is before the colon, right?
well,
Or
instead of
after the
forward
colon.
slash, it's a
backward
backslash.
slash, right?
So that if you do attempt to see
Ain't gonna
additional news, you're
Ain't
going to
gonna-
have trouble.
Right.
You're in trouble.
So Representative Mike McCall, Republican out of Texas, says, quote, "The threat is real, and it comes from the internet. This is a new generation of terrorists. This is not bin Laden in caves with couriers anymore. This is the new threat, and this is what terrorism looks like."
There may be a silver lining to all this. With bin Laden having an entire country to himself that he could hide out in, that nobody's messing with him, nobody's looking for him, nobody knows what he's really doing, he was able to spend 12 years organizing a large group of people that he could trust to fly jumbo jets into skyscrapers in
Right.
America in a ridiculously huge coordinated thing. I think that those days are over because everything is so interconnected and all the borders and everything in the entire world have just dissolved. It's like John Lennon's imagined.
Well, and Obama is helping him.
'Cause
Obama is helping currently to tear down all those borders worldwide.
Well, there's that. You're talking the physical borders. What I'm saying is when you're on the interwebs,
Right.
there are no physical barriers.
Correct.
In fact, the only virtual barrier there is between people on the internet is the language barrier, which Google is currently working on.
You know, I have an app that I speak English into, and then it will, and I hit play or tell it what language to translate it to, and I hit play, and it says it back to me in the language I want it to. My mother-in-law speaks Spanish.
Oh, did you?
I did it to her.
Yeah.
She said that was identical. She said that was word for word, absolutely correct.
In proper Spanish.
Right. So I wanted to send her a text because she reads Spanish better than English in text messages, and I had to get it to her. So I spoke to the app what I wanted to say to her. It translated it. I held my finger down and I copied it, put it in the text, and she didn't know who sent it to her.
She's like, well, I couldn't have been Brian.
Yes. It was so correct.
Like
the
whoa,
spelling, the hash marks.
This has to be like a Spanish professor or
Right,
something.
right.
So the punctuation was correct.
Oh,
Oh my
absolutely.
gosh, with the upside down question mark.
Oh, yeah. And you know what that means, though, right? It's closer to the end of days.
Well, because the virtual barriers between us that is language is eventually going to go away.
Right.
And when that happens, I don't
In
know.
the Bible, it was called, they were building the Tower of Babel. They were trying to get to God by building this tower. And that's where he destroyed the tower, scattered them all across the world, and made them speak different languages so that they could. I don't know. My wife knows the story better than I.
There you go.
But that's the whole gist of the story. That's why we speak all these
you need to
different
do
languages.
that interview with your pastor. He'll tell us all about it.
Yes, of course. He's a huge history buff.
Oh, he'll tell us all about it.
Huge history buff.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So, speaking of tearing down borders and making this one world caliphate,
Yeah.
we have, I guess, a couple of weeks ago when we did the show on the gay garage, the uniting of men to men in a ceremony of sorts. That Obamacare, it was a trifecta that week. It was, and then we came on air and we said that this is absolutely the worst week in all of American history.
Oh, certainly. I mean, it's over. It's over.
Right. And I talked to my neighbor who's 80, looks like he's 65, drinks like he's 55. A good guy. And he's 80, but he looks great. And I asked him, matter of fact, it was that Sunday before the show. I asked him, I said, I'm getting ready to go on air. Can you remember in your 80 years of life, has there ever been a week where so much has just been so wrong? He shook his head. He said, no.
Wow.
Well, I hate to do this to you folks. We got a week that just might have topped that, or at least equaled it.
Because of what he did with this agreement, this negotiation with the terrorists. We're just talking about how word comes down from the I want to get it through to everybody out there that even though they don't have a solid border and call it Islam whatever, and they have like a country
We're at war!
where there's a structure, and Iran is a part of that whole mess.
Right.
And sometimes they may bicker and fight amongst each other, where you have these wars between, Syria and whatever other Muslim country. I understand all that, but at the end of the day, when it comes to Islam, they're all on the same page. They all want to be under one big Sharian law with the caliphate, which is one unified physical country. And so just the fact that that's what their goal is and that's what they're going for should be all you need to hear to know that, for the most part, it's in their hearts at this point. It may be an actual reality. That being said, we're at war with these people. And,
no idea.
yeah. So so now we have President Obama who goes to the enemy, the same people who are responsible for an attack at Chattanooga on our military installation or recruiting office, just a strip mall, but still.
Well, the leaders. See, in Iran, they have a slightly different structure than us. They have one guy at the very top who's a religious leader called his name, the Ayatollah Khomeini, and he was put in power by Jimmy Carter because Jimmy Carter toppled what was there before, the regime that was there before. Not saying it was good, bad, right, wrong. I'm just saying it's made way for all of the evil that we have today in the Middle East.
Yeah, and for those of you,
thank you, Jimmy Carter.
Right, and for those of you that are too young to know or too ignorant to know, which, millennials, what are you going to do?
Right.
Jimmy Carter was the worst president in history until Obama came along. I mean, Jimmy Carter's got to be like breathing a huge sigh of relief.
He's got to be like,
this is part of his legacy.
Right. Jimmy Carter was like, oh my goodness, man, I'm the last kid on the playground to be picked to play kickball.
Ah, okay. All right.
And then Obama shows up on the scene, and Jimmy's like, yes!
He finally isn't going to be last anymore.
They're going to pick me now.
Well, pick him second last.
Second last is still not last.
Right. And that is a big deal. I remember being on a basketball court.
And you were the last one picked?
No, I was second last. And I remember being so relieved. I was so happy. I was like, because I would have felt like terrible.
Well, let me tell you how it feels. So, quoting Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, today a nuclear terrorist superpower is born and will go down as one of the darkest days in world history. Iran's been given a license to kill. I mean, that's direct quotes from Benjamin Netanyahu. And so bad is this nuclear deal. I've got the details. So bad is this nuclear deal that Israel and Saudi Arabia,
I think that was the one.
Israel and Saudi Arabia are joining forces against this.
What?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Israel.
Well, I'm not surprised about Israel. Obviously.
Christian Jews, Israel, and Muslim.
We're all the hijackers from 9/11.
9/11, right? They caused 9/11. They are uniting against Iran and this nuclear deal.
Well, does that mean they're uniting against America since our representative of our country has made this deal possible?
No, it's funny you say that because Benjamin Netanyahu addresses America as if he were the president of America. It's quite amazing when he speaks to us. So much so that I almost wish he could come to America and run for president of America.
Well, I think what he's realized was that there is a large constituency of, I guess that would be the wrong word. There's a huge group of people in America, I would argue a pretty solid majority, that completely oppose Obama, especially now.
Right.
Even though he did win the popular vote through a combination of votes and shenanigans.
Right.
I would say that a good solid majority oppose him. And Benjamin is stepping up and saying, well, then I'll be your representative.
Fair enough.
All right.
Fair enough. He also, Benjamin Netanyahu also said, this is a historic surrender by the West to the axis of evil.
I can't argue with that.
He used the word axis of evil. I love it because it was Reagan that first coined that, wasn't it?
Well, it goes back. It started with World War II when they called the
Germany.
Germany and
okay,
Austria.
Okay.
Germany, Austria, and mainly Japan and Germany. We
Right.
called the Axis, the bad guys.
Right.
So then when Reagan came along, he decided to play upon that by calling Russian the Axis of
USSR.
Yeah. Then there was then Bush came along. George W. Bush called North Korea and Iraq
Iraq, right.
the axis of evil.
Led by Saddam Hussein.
Yeah.
Yes, so
Barack Insane Obama.
so this from the article from Jerusalem newspaper. Israeli leaders across the political spectrum condemn in stark apocalyptic language the Iran nuclear pact announced by the United States and world powers Tuesday, calling it a historical mistake that frees Iran to sponsor global terrorism while assembling the expertise to build and deliver a nuclear bomb.
Well, and it's funny that the way you just read that, because every news outlet that I've seen that would fall under the category of mainstream is praising this, in addition to White House spokespeople and Obama himself coming out to say that this is going to prevent them. This is a great deal. It's going to prevent them from getting nukes and blah, blah, blah.
That's interesting you say that, Carrie. Have you been colluding with the man behind the glass? Because I have a sound clip
Okay.
of Obama defending
his horrible deal.
his deal.
Okay, let's hear it.
Let's let this one rip. Okay, producer, soundbite 1.
There's a reason this deal took so long to negotiate. Because we refused to accept a bad deal. We held out for a deal that met every one of our bottom lines, and we got it. Does this deal resolve all of the threats Iran poses to its neighbors in the world? No. Does it do more than anyone has done before to make sure Iran does not obtain a nuclear weapon? Yes. And that was our top priority from the start. That's why it's in everyone's best interest to make sure this deal holds. Because without this deal, there would be no limits on Iran's nuclear program. There would be no monitoring, no inspections. The sanctions we rallied the world to impose would unravel. Iran could move closer to a nuclear weapon. Other countries in the region might race to do the same, and we'd risk another war in the most volatile region in the world. That's what would happen without this deal.
Well, it's going to happen for sure now.
Okay, hold on. Here's the response. And
What difference at this point does it make?
okay,
And
I
that's
just
what they're-
threw them all.
So here's what's really happening.
Comment on what he just said, or can you
Well, I mean,
without your eyes bleeding?
when he said that. Okay, so theoretically, and by theoretically, I mean
Communism works on paper.
right. So, if you assume two things, that, well, the main thing is that they're going to honor exactly what we hope that they do, which is completely abandon any types of nuclear arms development whatsoever. I guess, in theory, it's okay. However, all bets are off after 15 years.
No, it's 10.
Oh, was it 10?
10.
I thought it was 15.
It's 10 years, and they call it a breakout month, where for the next few months after this is signed, they don't have to adhere to the deal for the first month or so.
Why would they have to adhere to the
They call
deal after that?
breakout
Breakout
month.
Breakout for nuclear weapons?
Correct.
Okay, so...
That was
here's
the language
actuality.
they used.
The actuality is because of the horrible way that we've we're going to try to keep them accountable, which is to give them a 24-day notice for inspections. And then later in the week, this week, we found out that there's nothing that we can do to make them allow inspections in their country at all.
Correct. They could say, no, we're not down with that, and we have to say, okay, it's part of the negotiations.
Right, because they have to voluntarily allow the inspectors in.
Right.
If they say, oh, well, we're not going to allow those people in, then they're technically not even violating the very agreement that Barack Obama is praising, patting himself, breaking his arm, patting himself on the back with.
So what was going on before this deal that kept them at bay that now we're so upset about that won't keep them at bay?
Well, I could tell you
And if
big one.
Right. Well, if you look at any situation, I think that the saying goes, follow the money.
Well, yeah,
and you'll find the answer.
So the big thing that was preventing them was two things. Number one, which is the biggest one probably, our economic sanctions were making them a little bit too broke to really have any kind of momentum to get their nuclear armament
the sanctions
off the ground.
Right. The sanctions were literally crippling them to get them to bend and break, and they're not doing it anymore. But they weren't doing it. They were holding fast.
And the second thing, well, first of all, that's gone. So now they're going to be able to build an economic powerhouse due to the lifting of sanctions. Number two, that was preventing them from really getting some speed up besides the economic sanctions, is we were not currently dumping truckloads of money on them.
To the tune of upwards, with all the sanctions being lifted and all the cash bonuses from your tax dollars, somewhere up above $150 billion.
There may be a genius mastermind at work here.
They're also giving them, setting them up, and this is the dangerous part right now. They're going to give them the latest technology in nuclear power for their nuclear power program to generate electricity. However, that technology that they're going to give them is critical technology in the building of nuclear weapons.
Okay, so we're giving them all the money.
Yes.
Not just giving them money out of our pocket, but allowing them money through their economic sanctions
and
being
all their
lifted.
oil, they'll get paid top dollar
Probably.
for all their oil that they couldn't get money from before. It will now flow like Niagara Falls into New York.
Yeah, so we're not just paying them on the
State.
front end, we're paying them on the back end.
Oh.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, so we got that going for them. And I mean, I'm thinking long term. Okay, well, let's walk through it. So, while they're not allowing inspections on their soil, I mean, best case scenario, we're giving them 24 days to clean house on any inspection, right?
On any given day, right.
That's best case scenario.
Right.
Worst case scenario is they don't even let the inspectors in their country.
Which before, if they didn't let them in, that's why the sanctions were in place.
Right.
So now all the sanctions have been lifted.
And we don't even have the carrot in front of them.
Right. And so...
Or the stick.
So Netanyahu says Iran is going to receive a sure path to nuclear weapons, quote, and he says many of the restrictions that were supposed to prevent it from getting nuclear weapons have all been lifted.
That's lifted. So here's what's going to happen. They're going to start doing nuclear construction for bombs as quickly as they can with all this excess money.
Right.
And they're going to try their best. And you know what that money could go towards, not just the actual building of the stuff that's going to make the parts and materials for the nukes themselves, but also provide for the construction of the infrastructure that's going to help them hide it.
Okay. Well, apparently their centrifuges. It's a machine, a way to enrich uranium.
Right.
Don't be scared by the word centrifuge. The centrifuges were supposed to stop enriching uranium. However, they continue to spin out of control.
Right.
Continue.
Not to get too technical, but if you just get raw uranium out of the ground.
P239.
Well, yeah, I would.
That was from Bugs Bunny. It was the green Martian.
Okay.
He kept you've got my uranium P239, and he'd stick it in the gun and blast the Earth.
So
sorry.
So there's some uranium that's cannot be used for a bomb, and other atoms of uranium that you specifically need for a bomb. And so you need to separate them and keep all of the good uranium for the bomb. And that's what the centrifuges do. It spins it at super high speeds, and the heavy stuff goes to the outside, the light stuff goes to the middle, and you get to keep the parts of the uranium that you want separate from the stuff you don't want. And it takes a long time, but after you accumulate enough of this stuff, you can put it all together, all the good stuff together, and create the enriched uranium accumulated in order to make your bomb. So
correct. So can they hear this? Let's test this out. I want to test something out for you folks.
Well, why don't you look at the levels when you...
Well, I won't hear it here, but if it's on our board, if the levels are on our board, they're hearing it. Correct?
I don't know.
Correct?
Pardon me again, Doc, but just what did you mean by that crack about the Earth being gone?
Oh, I'm going to blow it up. It obstructs my view of Venus.
It does? That's a shame.
Where's the kaboom? There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom. The Illudium Q-36 explosive space modulator. That creature has stolen the space modulator.
the Q-36 space modulator.
Okay. All right.
Just a little entertainment for you folks. I like to break it up because
we hope that he heard it, that everybody heard it, because that's the first time. We never used to be able to play a soundbite that way.
We'll check back at hour 107.
Okay. Is that
minute 107?
Minute
yeah.
107. Okay.
But the whole crux of this all is this. What you were saying, uranium. You have to enrich it, and you enrich it with a centrifuge.
Yeah, and apparently only a very small fraction of all of that uranium is usable for weapons. So it takes a lot of centrifuges, a long time of just spinning in order to get enough of it to create
weapons grade uranium versus just using a nuclear power plant to generate electricity.
I believe so.
Yeah. So, but they've been doing this. They've been enriching uranium at feverish speeds. And now this nuclear deal...
With their limited resources.
With limited resources. Now they have unlimited resources.
It's unlimited. Completely unlimited.
So I've got a sound clip from old Bibi Netanyahu, and here's his take on the deal gone wrong.
Amazingly, this bad deal does not require Iran to cease its aggressive behavior in any way. By not dismantling Iran's nuclear program, in a decade this deal will give an unreformed, unrepentant, and far richer terrorist regime the capacity to produce many nuclear bombs, in fact an entire nuclear arsenal, with the means to deliver it. What a stunning, historic mistake. Israel is not bound by this deal with Iran, and Israel is not bound by this deal with Iran because Iran continues to seek our destruction. We will always defend ourselves. Thank you.
He has been blasted for saying that.
Well, I mean, it's true.
He's been blasted for saying we'll defend ourselves. And we're not bound by this deal that Obama makes with, I think it was with France and Britain, and China. I don't know, a handful of knuckleheads. But Israel wasn't at the table of this negotiation, and so
well, I mean, I've always
they're not
kind
bound by
of
it.
thought this, and I may have said it several times in long-lost episodes of Smith Radio, but I've always thought that, sure, Obama's probably, he's at the minimum an Islamic sympathizer. Minimum.
Right.
Probably, having lived in Kenya as a child and grown up under the Quran and Sharia law, probably good chance, at least at one point, a chunk of his childhood, he would probably have told you, "Oh, I'm Muslim."
Right.
If you are a Muslim, by law, you would consider Obama a Muslim because he was born from a Muslim father.
And if you ask Muslims, is he Muslim?
Oh, they would say absolutely, 100%.
Well, if I said that Kerry was a Christian and not a Muslim, I mean, would you believe me? I mean, I'm believing because I am a Christian and I'm calling Kerry a Christian. You've got to believe me because I know what a Christian is because I am one. So I'm calling him a Christian as well. If
But
Muslims,
you know me personally.
correct, but if Muslims know what Muslims are, the list that makes you a Muslim, and the Muslim people are calling Obama a Muslim, I've got to believe them.
Right. But let's say by some weird coincidence that he's, not only is he not, but he has actually come out and said that he's Christian. I think that, I don't put it past him to lie.
Well, he said he was a Muslim, and then the narrator of the news article had to correct him.
Right. Well, at least
We had
save
that
him.
soundbite.
Save him.
We had that
Well, it was, oh, yeah, my Muslim faith. So,
I mean,
he never corrected himself. I think he just flowed. He kept on going.
oh, and the narrator said, "You mean Christian faith?" As I was saying.
Yeah, right. So there's that. But let's say I'm going to be extremely play devil's advocate here and just say, all right, I believe him. He's an honest man. He said he was Christian at another time. I'll go ahead and let's just say he's Christian. At the minimum, he's a Muslim sympathizer.
Oh, yes.
But here's what I've said or hinted at or alluded to in other shows, and I'll go ahead and repeat it because it's very relevant to what the BB thing and all that. I'm pretty sure he hates Jews. He's anti-Semitic, flat out.
So you're saying that there's a hatred.
Oh yeah, and I don't think it's just out of a vacuum.
It's been from the beginning. He has never, ever been cool and down with Israel. Not only has it never been, but even earlier this year when we reported on it, he paid and donated millions of dollars to an anti-Benjamin Netanyahu campaign in Israel during Bibi's reelection.
Do you think it's Israelis or Jews? Because there are some Israelis that are Christian, and there are probably even some that are Muslim. But is it a Jewish thing? Is it anti-Semitic, or is it just an anti-Israel thing? Like, hey, this country doesn't deserve to be here. It should be
Well, if you
Palestine.
go by the Bible, the problem is always and will always be Jews and things and issues throughout all
But I
of
also
history.
believe that he's an atheist, so he's going to look at the Bible as nothing.
Well, no, he's not getting his information from the Bible. He's just playing the part of the atheist and what they do.
Oh, okay.
Which is inherently attack the Jews. Like Hitler
It's
wasn't.
weird.
Hitler wasn't a Christian. Hitler wasn't a Christian. He was more of a liberal and a Democrat and a socialist communist dictator.
Well, as a socialist, he's definitely going down the path of a full-blown atheist communist.
Correct. And he said Jews were the number one problem of the earth. He didn't believe the Bible, but the Bible said he would do that. The Bible says that
So he's like an antichrist type.
Right.
Okay.
But I don't want to go so... everybody was especially with Bush and Dick Cheney and the devil and the Antichrist and Hitler and everybody calling everybody everybody on the left calls everybody on the right Hitler.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because Hitler comes from their side.
And we don't call them Stalin, Lenin, and Mao enough.
But right, we should be calling them constantly, every day. Stalinist regime, Marxist regime.
But Marx, while he indirectly is responsible for the millions and millions and millions and millions that have been murdered under communism,
right.
indirectly by writing the Communist Manifesto, he didn't send the orders to do so. So calling somebody a Marxist is like saying you're a problem, but you're not a murderer. But when you call somebody Stalin or Mao, you're pretty much calling them a murderer at that point.
Right. Well,
because you're a communist. You're not a murderer because you just like to kill people. You are a murderer because you want dead those that are not following communism. Remember what I told you Lenin said? I said on the show a couple of weeks ago that he actually said, oh no, that was Khrushchev. It was either Khrushchev or Lenin, said that, I don't really care if 3/4 of the entire population of Earth dies as long as the remaining quarter are communists.
Right. And that's all he cares about. Think about it. Something else I want to point out, and I've been meaning to point this out, is that we were talking about immortality just a second ago with technology, and there are sites out right now, especially like the Google, that